This book is full of spiders. 29 hours prior to Outbreak. Paralyzed. Was this permanent? I pictured the venom turning my spinal column into mush. Molly glanced at me, quietly judging me for my laziness. She worked over her severed spider legs, realizing there wasn't much meat inside the crunchy outer shell. She instead settled in and pinned the legs under her front paws, then started carefully licking the cheese off of them. I lay there for an interminable amount of time that in reality was about 1 hour. I eventually felt a tingling across my torso as I sleepily imagined I had landed on an anthill. It was, however, the feeling returning to my body. 20 minutes or so later, I found I could twitch with my fingers. A half hour after that, I was sitting upright on my sofa, cradling my throbbing head in my hands. I devoted all my mental energy to blocking out any thoughts of what the spider had intended to do with my immobilized body. Well, the first step would be to lay eggs. Oh wait, the spider. It could still be here. Shit. 3 seconds later, I was on the porch, peering back through the front door in my own living room. No sign of the spider, but then again, it was pitch dark inside and I had a streetlight behind me, so all I could see in the little window was a reflection of my own stupid face. My hair looked like I combed it with an angry cat. I reached for my cell phone, then realized it was still on the floor in the living room. I flung open the door, sprinted in, rolled, grabbed the phone, and sprinted back out, slamming the door behind me. I dialed John. Voicemail. "This is John. If you're calling because you found the rest of my guitar, just bring it by the apartment. Sorry about the rug. Leave a message." I didn't. Even on a Thursday night, the man was probably marinated and comatose by now. I glanced around the neighborhood, my nervous breaths barely visible in the November air. Why was mine the only house that didn't have power? I raised the phone, but didn't dial. The English language needs a word for that feeling you get when you badly need help, but there's no one you can call because you're not popular enough to have friends, not rich enough to have employees, and not powerful enough to have lackeys. It's a very distinct cocktail of impotence, loneliness, and a sudden stark assessment of your non-worth to society. Interdment? There was a broom leaning by the front door, from when I had used it to knock a dead bird off the porch a few days ago. I clutched it in front of me like a spear and pushed through the door. Molly brushed past me in the opposite direction, presumably to find the perfect spot outside my car door to take a dump so that I'd be sure to step in it the next time I was in a hurry to get to work. I took one step inside, focusing on the floor The spider thumped under my head, twitchy legs tangling in my hair. I dropped the broom and threw my hands up as the monster climbed over my ear and onto my shoulder, itchy little legs all over my face and neck. I grabbed the spider around the body, rigid legs bending under my hands. I tried to pull it off. I couldn't. The feet were latched on somehow. My shirt and my skin stretched away from my shoulder as I pulled. I heard a screeching like steam from a teapot and realized it was me. Sharp mandibles filled the view in my right eye. A stab of pain seared through my skull. I lost vision in that eye and thought the bastard had plucked out my eyeball. I let out a scream of rage and grabbed bundles of legs with both hands, ripping away from my skin. I felt wetness and realized the monster had left one leg behind, the foot still attached to my shoulder. But I was free of the creature now, the unholy thing thrashing around in my hands, twisting its mouth toward me, trying to bite. That freaking ton. God damn it. I frantically looked around with my one good eye, trying to find a container I could cram the creature into. Laundry basket, bedroom floor. Into the bedroom. Kicked over the plastic basket. I kicked over the plastic basket, dumping the clothes. I dunked the beast inside and turned the basket over, imprisoning it. I knocked the shit out of my nightstand and laid it sideways on top of the basket, good and heavy. There are vertical slots in the basket and the spider stuck a leg through. It couldn't crawl out, but I suspected could bite through the plastic eventually. Have to watch it. I sat heavily on the bed, chest heaving, face wet and sticky, cringing. I lifted a tentative hand to the right side of my face, expecting to find a squishy eyeball laying on my cheek. I didn't. I winced as I felt around the eyelid, raw skin stinging at my touch. Everything felt torn and ragged up there. I blinked and tried looking through the eye, found I could a little bit. I looked down, intending to dig my cell phone from my pocket and let out a disgusted hiss. The spider's black leg, the one that broke off when I was pulling it off me, was still stuck to my shirt. I grabbed it and pulled it, and it would not come free. It wasn't stuck to the shirt. It was stuck to me, pulling up the skin like a circus tent. The foot was hooked in somehow, dug in like a tick. I pulled apart the hole in the shirt and pinched the skin between two fingers and tried to get a close look at it. I couldn't tell the exact point where the severed leg ended and the patch of skin on my shoulder began. It was like the leg had fused to it somehow. I pulled and twisted. It was like trying to pull off one of my own fingers. I was getting seriously pissed off at this point. I stomped out of the bedroom and into the kitchen. I yanked open several drawers until I found a utility knife, what some people call a box cutter. Molly came trotting in behind me, figuring maybe I was making a snack and she could get some scraps. I pulled off my shirt, then grabbed a long wooden spoon and stuck it sideways in my mouth. I stabbed the tip of the utility knife's short blade in at the point where the monster's foot was fused with my skin and started prying. I growled and cursed around the spoon, teeth denting into the wood. A thick drop of blood ran down my chest like candle wax. It took 20 minutes. In the end, I had the 6-inch long jointed leg in my hand, with a little dot of bloody skin and fat on the end that used to be part of me. I held a bundle of wet paper towels to the wound, smears of blood making my abdomen look like a finger painting. I put the monster's leg in a plastic container from my cabinet. I leaned against the counter, eyes closed, taking slow breaths. I had taken one step back toward the bedroom when a knock came at the door. I froze, decided not to answer it, then realized it may be John. I went into the bedroom to check on the caged beast. It had 2 legs through a slot in the plastic basket, but made no progress toward biting its way out. I made my way back across the living room, smacking my foot on the coffee table on the way. I yanked open the door. A young guy. I knew him. Name was Frankie something. Went to high school with me. I straightened up and said, "What can I do for you, officer?" I saw his eyes go right to my torso, where I was holding a red wad of paper towels over a freely bleeding wound, then back to my face, where one eye was swollen shut under a ragged eyelid caked with dried blood. He had a hand resting on the butt of his gun, alert in that way that cops are. He began with, "Who else is in the house, sir?" "It's fine. I mean, nobody. I live here alone. I mean, my girlfriend lives here with me, but she's away at school right now, so it's just me. Everything's fine. I just had a problem with something that came into the house, some kind of animal." "You mind if I come in, sir?" There was no right answer to that, since he clearly thought I had a butchered prostitute in here somewhere. I stepped aside without a word. That "sir" shit was irritating me. He was my age. I went to parties with this guy in school, watched him play teabag twister with underwear on his head. Burgess, I thought. That's his name. Frankie Burgess. He walked past me and I said, "I turned on a light, but the power's out. Must have, blown a fuse or something." He gave me a look that suggested what I just said gave him a whole new perspective on my mental state. I could read his face perfectly because the living room light was on. "Oh, right," I stumbled. "Guess it's back on now." I blinked. Had it been on this whole time? The place was a mess. I mean, it had been a mess before. The blood I dripped on the carpet actually blended with a nearby coffee stain. But where we were standing gave us a clear view into the kitchen, where drawers were flung open, a roll of paper towels had fallen onto the floor, and a pile of plastic lids had spilled out of a cabinet. A couple of steps after that, and he would have had a view of the main bedroom, where it looked like a bomb had gone off. Oh, and there was an alien spider monster trapped under an overturned laundry basket with a piece of furniture piled on top of it. Now, the cop moved into the kitchen, and I followed him. I heard a skittering noise from the bedroom and saw the spider trying desperately to escape between the plastic bars of his laundry basket prison. The cop gave no notice. He looked at the bloody box cutter on the counter, then glanced back at me and my several bloody wounds. I stepped casually backward, stopping in front of the bedroom door, leaning against the doorframe as if I wasn't somehow trying to block the view of the room with my body. "Yeah, that," I said, nodding toward the little knife. "I cut myself a few times. No big deal. I was trying to get this thing off me. Think it was a possum or something. I couldn't get a good look at it. It was clawing me up pretty bad." He was looking past me into the bedroom and said, "Can you step aside, sir?" "Screw it. Let this thing bite his eyes out. What do I care? Go right in, Frankie." I stepped aside and Frankie the cop entered the bedroom. He surveyed the carnage, then finally looked down on the overturned basket. 5 little armored legs writhed around between the plastic slats. The cop casually looked away, glancing into my closet with disinterest. Finally, he looked back at me. "So, did you kill it or what?" The beast was right there in the basket, in full view. Jaws clicking against the plastic, a sound like a dog gnawing on a bone. It had gotten a few legs entirely through the basket and was now pulling its body through. All of this went entirely unnoticed by Officer Burgess. He doesn't see it. No, I tried to trap it." The thing had its head out of the basket now. Frankie looked down. Nothing to see. He looked back at me. Have you had anything to drink tonight, sir? Couple of beers earlier. Have you taken anything else? No. Can you tell me what day it is? The spider had a third of its body out of the basket. There was a thick piece of armor around its abdomen that was wedged in between the plastic strips. It had 4 legs working on the problem. Thursday, I guess it's Friday morning now. November 4th, I think. My name is David Wallen. I'm currently standing in my home. I'm not high. The neighbors are worried about you. They heard a lot of noise in here. You try waking up with some animal biting you in your sleep. This isn't the first time we've been out here, is it? I sighed. No. You put some weight on top of the basket there. I told you I was trying to trap it. No, the basket was you trying to trap it. I'm thinking the weight is on there because you thought you had it trapped. What? No, it was dark. The monster pulled the widest piece of shell through the bars, halfway out, the difficult half. Is it possible you made all those cuts yourself? With that knife in there? What? No, I don't think so. Why do you keep looking down there? I took a step back out of the room. No reason. Do you see something down there, Mr. Wallen? I turned my eyes to the cop. I was sweating again. No. Have we been seeing things tonight? I didn't answer. Because this wouldn't be the first time, would it? No, I'm fine. I focused on not looking down at the basket. The chewing sounds had stopped. I couldn't hold out anymore. I looked down. It was gone. I felt my bowels loosen. I glanced around the room, checked the ceiling. Nowhere. The cop turned and left the room. Why don't you come with me, Mr. Wallen, and I'll take you to the emergency room. What? No, I'm fine. The cuts are no big deal. Don't look minor to me. No, it's fine. Put it in your report that I refuse treatment. I'm fine. You got any family that live here in town? No. Nobody. Parents? Aunts? Uncles? Long story. There a friend we can call? John, I guess. I was glancing everywhere, trying to spot the spider. No idea what I'd do if I did. Well, tell you what. Give him a call, and I'll hang out here until he shows up. Keep you company, in case the animal comes back. I couldn't think of anything that would make this guy leave, short of punching him and forcing him to haul me to jail. That hardly seemed like a solution, though. The cop can stay as long as he wants, I thought, as long as he doesn't go to the tool shed. Frankie the cop turned to me at that moment and said, I'm going to have a look around outside. I let the cop go out the back door, but didn't offer to follow him. I guess he wanted to do a walk around of the yard to make sure there wasn't a corpse out there. Let him. As soon as he was out of sight, I moved back through the kitchen, into the living room, and then to the bedroom. I flipped on the light, checked the ceiling, checking everywhere. No spider. I heard the muffled sound of steps on crackling leaves and saw the cop outside, passing the window with a flashlight. I headed for the bathroom, soaked a washcloth, and cleaned the dried blood off me. I got a Band-Aid on my shoulder and cleaned up the eyelid, flinching with every stinging touch. I went into the bedroom, searching for the monster, even looking in the laundry basket in case the thing had decided to return for some reason. I put on a shirt and tried to push down my hair, thinking I could present a picture of a stable citizen for the cop and make him feel better about leaving. Before he asks to see the tool shed. I grabbed my phone from the bed and dialed John one last time. 3 rings and then... Hello? John, it's me. What? Who? We got a situation. Can I wait until after work tomorrow? No, there's something in my house. I glanced around for the cop. A creature. It took a chunk out of my leg and then it went for my eye. Really? You kill it? No, it's hiding somewhere. It's small. How small? Size of a squirrel. Built like an insect. A lot of legs, maybe 12. It had a mouth like... I turned and saw the cop standing in the bedroom doorway. I nodded sideways toward the phone and said, This is John. He's on his way. Good. He nodded toward the back door. Do you have a key to the tool shed outside? I pocketed the phone without saying goodbye to John. No, I've lost the key. I haven't been out there in months. I got a pair of bolt cutters out in my trunk. Tell you what, let me open that up for you. No, that won't be necessary. I insist. You don't want to be stuck without your lawn implements. You can finally rake all these leaves out here. We stared each other down. Man, this just kept getting better and better. I found myself wishing the spider would jump down and eat this guy. Actually, I think I have a key. Good. Get it. I went into the kitchen and plucked the tool shed key off the nail next to the back door, where it had been in plain view the entire time. Frankie the cop let me lead the way outside of the shed, staying a few steps back so that he could have time to shoot me in case I decided to wheel on him with fists of fury. I held out the key and took a deep breath. I slipped it into the padlock and snapped it open. I pulled the tool shed door slightly ajar and turned to Frankie. "What's in here? I collect things. It's a hobby, that's all. And as far as I know, there's nothing illegal here. Though you could say some of it is, imported." "Could you go ahead and step back, sir?" He opened the little shed and stabbed the darkness with a flashlight beam. I held my breath. He went right to the floor with the light, where a body would be, I guess. There wasn't one there. Not right now. And instead, he illuminated the crust of glass on the wheel of my lawnmower. Then he flicked the flashlight beam to the set of metal shelves along the back and side walls. The beam hit a glass jar the size of a can of paint and illuminated the murky liquid inside. Officer Frankie Burgess stared at it, waiting for his eyes to register what he was seeing. Eventually, he would figure out it was a late-term fetus, a head the size of a fist, its eyes closed. It had no arms or legs. Its torso had been replaced by a jointed mechanical apparatus that hooked around to a point like the tail of a seahorse. I manufactured a chuckle and said, "Got that off eBay. It's a prop from a movie." The cop glanced at me. I glanced away. He shined his light back onto the shelf. Next to the jar was an ant farm. The tunnel between the panes of glass had been dug neatly to spell out the word help. Next to that was my old Xbox, the cables wrapped around it. He moved the light down a foot to the shelf below. He passed over a stack of old magazines, not noticing that the top was an old faded issue of Time, depicting a swarm of Secret Service agents around a dead Bill Clinton, the words, "Who did it?" blasting across the picture in red. Next to the magazines was a stuffed red Tickle Me Elmo doll, the fur faded with dust. At the moment the light hit it, its soundbox crackled to life, and in a cartoony voice it said, 5 3/4 inches erect. I said, "It's, broken." Frankie the cop inched the beam to the next object, a mason jar containing a twisted purple tun suspended in clear liquid. Next to it was a duplicate jar, only with 2 human eyes floating in side by side, trailing a tangled tail of nerves and blood vessels. The cop didn't notice that when the beam swept past the jar, the eyes turned to follow it. Next to the jars was an old battery from my truck, matted with smears of black grime. The light made it to the bottom, where it found a red plastic gasoline can sitting on the floor next to an old CRT computer monitor with a screen that had been shattered by a gunshot. Next to it was the only thing I didn't want the cop to see, the box. We heard crunching leaves behind us. "Yo, what's up?" The cop and I turned to see a dark figure with one hand swinging the orange coal of a burning cigarette. John. "Hi, Frankie. Dave, sorry I sent you all those pictures of my dick. I hope that's not what caused you to injure your eye." The cop put the flashlight on John, maybe to make sure he wasn't armed. John wore a flannel shirt and a black baseball cap with the word "hat" on it in all caps. Frankie the cop thanked John for coming over. I was hoping he would back out of the tool shed because each minute he stood there made me more and more nervous. My eye and my shoulder were throbbing. The wind shifted and I picked up the scent of alcohol from John. The cop swung the flashlight beam around and spotlighted the floor of the tool shed again. Light fell on the box, and I mean the box. The olive green box we'd found in the back of that unmarked black truck. It looked like a serious box. It looked something like you'd want to look inside of, if your job was to keep people safe. Frankie nodded toward it. "What's in the green box there?" "Don't know." That was sort of true, I guess. John said, "We found it. You can't get it open." That was also true. Frankie couldn't get it open. I said, "You can take it back with you if you want. Put it in the lost and found at the police station." The cop clicked off the flashlight, then asked John if they could go inside and talk. He then gestured toward the tool shed with the flashlight and said to me, "You want to close that up while I have a word here with John?" I said that seemed like a fine idea, and their shoes crunched to the leaves until they reached the light of my back door. I closed the tool shed and clicked the padlock shut, then let out a sigh of relief. The relief lasted approximately 4 seconds. The time it took me to realize John and Frankie the cop were now back inside the house with the murderous alien spider. I hurried back inside and saw John and the cop in my living room, having a low conversation out of my hearing. The cop, I guess, was asking John to babysit me and to call if I showed more signs of craziness. I moved closer and barely heard John say, "Been real depressed lately." I wondered what kind of portrait he was painting in there. I scanned the kitchen for the spider, being sure to check the high ground. No sign of it. I closed some of the open drawers and cabinets, tried to straighten the place up. I made it all the way out of the room before I turned and realized the cabinets would be an ideal hiding place for the little bastard. I'd be getting out my cereal tomorrow morning and the fucker would launch itself at me. Could I search through them without drawing Frankie's attention? Better wait. Instead, I checked the bedroom, again under the guise of straightening up. I looked under my blankets and then under the bed. I pushed around the clothes in my closet, checked behind the door. No spider. When I came out, I saw John and the copper on the front porch. Progress. John was thanking the man for coming out, saying he hoped Frankie would remember me in his prayers because I could really use it right now because my life was really a mess and I was just a complete pathetic loser struggling with my weight and financial problems and alcohol and erectile dysfunction. I decided to join them before John could defame me further. The cop was already walking back toward his patrol car, as John said, and his girlfriend is away and she's only got one hand. She lost it in an accident. You can imagine the problems that causes. Frankie was desperately trying to escape the conversation, talking into the little radio mounted on the shoulder of his uniform, letting headquarters know that everything was under control here. John and I watched him go. Then we heard a skittering by our feet and saw the goddamn spider run past our shoes. It vanished into the darkness, heading right toward the cop. I jumped off the porch, waving my hands. "Wait, Frankie! Officer Burgess! Wait!" The cop stopped just short of the squad car and turned to me. I opened my mouth, but the words retreated back into my throat. A bundle of thin black legs appeared over Frankie's left shoulder, touching his bare neck, and he couldn't feel a thing. From behind me, John said, Frankie, don't move, man. You got something on you." Frankie put his hand on the butt of his gun again, looking alertly between me and John as if his crazy person troubles had just multiplied. The monster crawled over Frankie's shoulder and put legs on his cheek. John screamed, "Frankie, do this!" John made a brushing motion on his own cheek, as if waving away a fly. "Seriously, you got something on your face." Frankie, oblivious to his situation, did not follow these instructions. He started to say something about us not moving any closer. I lunged, throwing my hands toward the little monster. I never made it. Frankie did something to me that dropped me to my knees, gasping for air. It was some kind of chop to the throat, and man, it worked. I looked up and for the second time tried to warn Frankie, and for the second time I was unable to. The spider crawled around to Frankie's chest and then, in a blur, burrowed into his mouth. Frankie flailed backward and flung himself to the ground, his head thunking against the squad car's door on the way down. Frankie clawed at his mouth with his hands, gasping, choking, spasming. I backed away, crawling backward on my ass through the leaves. As I retreated, John advanced, saying, Frankie, hey!" Frankie wasn't responsive. His arms were locked in front of him, fingers curled like he was being electrocuted. John spun on me and said, "We gotta get him to the hospital." I sat there in the grass, frozen, wishing I could just go back inside and crawl under the covers again. John threw open both back doors of the cop car. He dug his hands under Frankie's shoulders. "Dave, help me." I got to my feet and took Frankie's ankles. We wrestled him into the back seat of the squad car, John backing out through the opposite door. We closed it up and John took the wheel. I slid beside John as he hunted around the console for a switch. He found it, flipped it. A siren pierced the night. He shifted into gear and tore down the street, red and blue flashing off every window in the neighborhood as we raced past. We blew through an intersection. I pulled on my seatbelt and braced my hands against the dash. "That thing came into my house, John. It came into my house." I know. I woke up and that thing was biting me. In my bed, John." We turned the corner, rounding a closed restaurant with "For Sale" painted on the windows in white shoe polish. We passed the blackened shell of a hardware store that had burned down last year. We passed a trailer park and a used car dealership and a 24-hour adult bookstore and a skanky motel that never had any vacancies because lots of poor people lived there full time. It was in my house, John. Do you get what I'm saying here? Frankie couldn't even see it. It was on his face and he couldn't see it. It was in my house. I felt my body push against the armrest on the door. Tires squealed. John was taking a corner car chase style. 2 blocks up was the concrete parking garage for the hospital, the lit windows of the hospital itself looming up behind it. I peered back through the wire screen separating us from Frankie, who was laying motionless across the back seat, eyes open. His chest was heaving, so at least he wasn't dead. "Almost there, man. Okay, hold on, okay?" I turned to John. "It crawled in his mouth. Did you see it?" I saw it. "Are they going to be able to help him? You really think the doctors can do something?" We squealed into the parking lot and followed a sign that said emergency. We skidded to a stop in a covered drive up to the emergency room. We threw open the back door and dragged out Frankie. then clumsily lugged him toward a set of glass doors that slid open for us automatically. Before we got 5 feet inside, a couple of orderlies came and started barking questions at us that we had no answers to. Somebody rolled up a gurney. John started talking, telling the guys the cop had some kind of seizure, that he had something in his throat, definitely to check his throat. There was a flicker of red and blue lights out of the corner of my eye. A second cop car turning in fast across the parking lot. They probably saw John and me tearing ass through town and followed us up here. The orderlies were rolling away Frankie and a third guy showed up. A doctor, I guess, taking his vitals. I turned to John to tell him about the second cop car, but he had already spotted it. I followed him back out to the sidewalk. Think we should hang around? He asked. I don't think so. I'm already on probation. Dave, they're gonna come get us. They'll want to know what happened. Nah, I don't think this thing's gonna be a big deal. Probably send us a nice card for getting Frankie to the hospital. Come on. We took off walking, since it didn't seem wise to go back at home in the stolen cop car. We went around the edge of the lot as the approaching police car whooshed past us. It skidded to a stop next to Frankie's vehicle and 2 cops spilled out and went inside. We silently cut across the lawn and crossed a street with the traffic light blinking yellow. We cut through the darkened parking lot of a Chinese restaurant called Panda Buffet, which did not in fact serve panda meat as far as we knew. Behind it was one of the city's many abandoned properties, the depressing twin buildings of an old tuberculosis asylum that had been closed since the 60s. The gray bricks tinged moss green. John lit a cigarette and asked, "So what do you think that thing was?" I didn't answer. I found myself scanning the dark plane of each parking lot we passed, studying the shadows, looking for movement. I noticed my steps were hurrying me unconsciously toward the pool of light under the next street lamp. We passed into the parking lot of a tire place with a 10-foot-tall tire mascot standing by the street. The mascot was made of real tires, with mufflers for arms and a chrome wheel for a head. Some joker had used white spray paint to draw a penis in the front of it, in an anatomically appropriate spot. John said, "So that thing crawled into his mouth. What do you think it was doing?" "How should I know?" A blur of red and blue zipped by. Another cop car, lights flashing. 30 seconds later, another one. John said, "Man, these guys really gather around one of their own, don't they?" We walked on, hesitant, a sick feeling in my gut. 2 more cop cars flew by. One had different markings. State cop, I guess. "They're just going there to check up on him, right, John?" "I don't know, man. Let's get home. We'll see if they got anything about it on TV." But if he had stopped saying, "No point. All you'll get is the news after it gets filtered for the reporters. We'll get better information if we go back down there." "We'll just be in the—" I stopped at the sound of a distant scream. John said, "You hear that?" "No." Another cop car zipped past. How many of these things did they have in this town? "Come on, Dave." John took off walking back the way we came. I stood my ground. I didn't want to go back there, but, and I'm not ashamed to admit this, I also didn't want to walk back to my place alone, in the dark. I raised a hand to touch the spot in my eye where I had been bitten, raw flesh under a Band-Aid. I winced as the pain in my shoulder stopped before I could get my hands up there. The chunk taken out of my skin there was getting sore by the minute. I was about to tell John to have fun without me when, pop, 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 the sound of distant gunshots, like firecrackers. John started jogging back across the tire store parking lot toward the hospital. I let out a breath, then followed.